Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. The season is here. Training camp is underway. We have an esteemed panel to kind of get you ready.
Esteemed?
Yeah, I would go esteemed to get you ready for this season. We'll start with the most tenured member of course, the panel, Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com, the voice of your New Orleans Pelicans, Todd Graffagnini, and all everything, a.k.a. sideline reporter. You have a handful of titles here all of a sudden. Andrew Lopez.
I will say, I'll take if we're going to steam, like we definitely worked our way through.
There's no doubt.
Top of the list on down.
There's a lot to kind of get into as the new season's around the corner. Pel's getting a little head start on a lot of other teams, guys, as we know they're heading to Australia for the first two preseason games. Then we'll have two preseason games here in the States. But it all started this week, obviously with camp underway. But back on Monday, the new man in charge, Mr. Joe Dumars, set the tone, fellas, with this.
Let me set the expectations for you guys right now, so there's no misunderstanding. I said there's no amount of wins. There's no you got to make the play in. You got to make the play. None of that. I said what I expect from us is to be like a high competing team every night. And I said, guys, let me tell you specifically why I say that. If you have a really deep team, if you have 10, 11 guys that you can go to, and they all play hard every night because we're so deep, I said the wins will take care of themselves. I don't know what that'll be, but if we play as hard as we can play every night, we're going to get enough wins where we're going to be happy. So I'm not going to put a number on you because I don't know what that is, but I expect our team to play hard every night. I expect no less, and I will accept no less from that.
Jim, we'll start with you. It's pretty plain and simple how he expects this team to play night in and night out.
I think the biggest thing that he stressed is just that they're going to be competitive every night. One of the things that he mentioned that he doesn't want to see any nights where they don't have intensity. So I think there were times last season. I mean, we went through a bunch of injuries, a bunch of different lineups, and it made it more challenging to kind of put forth the same performance, the same effort every single game. But you can tell he's not going to accept there being those kind of peaks and valleys as far as the effort. You want to have way fewer nights where at the end of the game you're saying the other team played harder than we did.
I think it's one of those things where it's nice to hear him say, you want that depth, you want that energy, and I think we saw that in the first practice. I mean, it's the first thing Trey Murphy talked about, it's what Jordan Poole talked about, it's what Z and Willie talked about, the fact that you had that energy, and we felt it. We were in there. We're able to be in there for practices and kind of be there from start to finish, and it did feel like a different energy. You heard Jordan Poole the entire time. I think that Trey Murphy kind of talked about, but you saw how much I think that energy and that intensity kind of led itself into the first practice.
Some things you can control, some things you can't control. What happened last year, a lot of those things you could not control when you're talking about injuries. You know what you can't control? How hard you play each and every night. Now, you're playing 82 games, you got back-to-backs, you got 3 games in 4 nights. Sometimes the energy might be lacking at times, but that is something that should be expected each and every night by this team. And if you play hard, no matter who's on the court, you're going to give yourself a chance.
And I expect that from a guy who is a part of the bad boy Pistons.
No question.
You can't go out there and foul like it was in 1989, but you can go out there and play as hard as those guys.
I can't remember many clips where the Pistons weren't, playing hard or giving teams fits on every single game night. Now, look, let's just kind of do this little segment called kind of what they say, because Joe spoke, and then that was on Monday. Tuesday, Willie Green and the players went through the gauntlet during media day, and I thought a lot of things sort of stood out to me. So let's just kind of go around the table here as to what specifically maybe of them all stood out. Jim, what would they say in terms that stood out to you?
I think one of the most interesting things that I enjoyed listening to was hearing Kevon Looney and Jordan Poole from a perspective of playing for other teams, playing for Golden State, what their opinions are of the Pelicans and coming here, kind of their excitement level to play on a team that has Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and some of the other guys. I thought one of the things that Looney said, too, he remembered 18 months ago in 2024 when the Pelicans played Golden State at the end of the regular season, and the Pelicans had a huge win. Trey Murphy had like 6 3-pointers in that game, and it almost put New Orleans in the top 6. It was within a hair of that happening. Unfortunately, that didn't take place. But you can hear from the other players who've been in the league, Saddiq Bey as well as another veteran that came in here who's been in the league for a while. They understand that last year was an outlier for New Orleans, that the 21 win season is just so different from what they experienced before that. So I just think that they have a lot more respect for the talent that's here than maybe what we've heard in some of the national media predictions and projections so far.
To hear the perspective of guys that were not on the team that are coming in and feeling that their contributions are going to help put the Pelicans over that, threshold and get to the postseason. That's Jim, you are a classic Thunder stealer right there.
I'm gonna go with Herbert Keyshawn Jones.
Okay.
And not so much of, he talked about, which a lot of things he does talk about, but let's go to him talking about his contract and how he's still just going to wear team gear and how he's still just going to be that because you have to dress, and it just reminded me of these things of Herb Jones is back. And I think when you look at so many things that you missed last year, you missed Herb Jones. And he was eliminated to 20 games last year because of both injury, or the same injury to the shoulder, re-aggravating it later on. But you missed that so much on the defensive end. And I think as we're starting to see NBA referees we go back to the All-Star game 2 years ago, that post-All-Star decision where it's like, we can be a little handsy, and then you watched it in the playoffs. You watched how Oklahoma City played defense. I'm sure Todd loves watching how Oklahoma City, huge fan of how Oklahoma City plays defense. How the Indiana Pacers play defense.
Right.
And if they're going to start letting us call that, we saw that in practice. It's you can get into your guy, you can put your hands on him, and you can do that. And I think all of these things, Herb was first team all defense without having to do any of that. And you give him a little bit extra, you have a healthy Herb going into the season. Just hearing him talk about, I'm just going to go back, I'm going to wear my team gear, you only wear it for 5 minutes. It just reminded me of, we get Herb Jones again. We get to watch Herb Jones play basketball again. And we get to watch Herb Jones play basketball again. We get to watch Trey Murphy play basketball again.
Well,
it's a lot of things.
You're exactly right. It really hits you when we walked out there and you see the guys warming up. It's like, wow, the team's back. You forget who's on the team because they weren't available at the end of, most of last year.
And like you were talking about, it's so much bad luck. Like Trey's shoulder gets kicked. Herb's going for a loose ball.
Diving, right, exactly. No.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's nice to see these guys back on the floor and having some fun.
Well, one of the reasons he's tenured, he always produces statistics that make you go, wow. When we're sitting there at practice, and Jim, tell everyone, how many games Herb, Trey, and Zion played last year?
They played 0.
Think about that for a second.
I'd rather, I'll be honest with you, I'd rather not.
No, I know.
I'd rather not think about that.
What I'm saying is a former number 1 overall pick, an all-pro defensive player, and a guy who, in our office, Todd, looked at us and said, my goal this year is to be an all-star player. He's got that kind of caliber talent, Trey Murphy. They played 0 games out of 82. That really is what stood out to me, obviously, hearing him talk about that, and receipts. Trey Murphy says he has receipts. This team has a little bit chip on the shoulder. In 20 seconds, we'll move on. Do you think this team has a chip on its shoulder?
Definitely. I think everybody's motivated by the fact that the national perspective has been so low. David Aldridge from The Athletic, for example, mentioned in one of the things that he wrote recently, he said, there's been a lot of negativity towards the Pelicans and some criticism. Some of it may be justified, but you'd think that they burned down Canal Street. So, just as an example of it, just seems like it's extreme.
I'd like to add something here. I just think, and sure, national media can have their opinion, but how can you give an opinion on a team that you haven't even seen? The first time we went in the gym yesterday was the first time that we had seen the team as it's constructed. So I
didn't like how you looked at me when you said national media.
No, just have you been in there? I haven't.
I've been in national media. I just didn't like you were directing that toward me,
no,
Todd.
No, Andrew.
I love that.
No, Andrew.
Well, look, we're at the halfway point here in our first podcast. We'll be with you throughout the season here as well. Looking forward to it. But there's a lot to kind of get into because we're going to see what kind of season this team is going to have. And it's based on really how you start, middle, and all that, but personnel starts. All right, so training camp. we're underway. A week earlier than a lot of the other NBA teams as they go to Australia. Having time here and then having time in Australia. Andrew, we'll start with you since you're going to Australia. How are they handling that? Do you think it can be a factor?
I think it's one of those things where it's an early bonding experience. And I think when you have still a lot of new pieces, you have Jordan Poole, you have Kevon Looney, all the rookies, you're trying to kind of integrate them back into it. It's a new feel sometimes when you, like you mentioned, when those guys haven't played together and it feels like they haven't played together in 2 years, they're trying to get back and get rhythm with everybody. I think it's a nice thing. You do have, 4 or 5 days of practice in New Orleans, a very long flight without Wi-Fi. I'm required to say that every time I talk about the flight. When you get there, obviously you're going to get some rest, but then you have like 4 more practices in Australia with some games. It's a chance to kind of come together as a team, and I think when you're together that long, and there's going to be some dinners and some other things that you can kind of get to do in Australia. It's one of those things that can help, and I think we saw a little bit of that last year in Nashville. Obviously, things as soon as we get back is when
Right.
I mean the injuries start day one or game one, I should say, and obviously the bad luck started from there. But when you can kind of use this to kind of build, it's different when you're just in one place like we were last year, but now you're here, can kind of establish your culture, establish your principles. When we talked to Jordan Poole after the first practice, the first thing that Jordan Poole said was, somebody asked him about the terminology. How is it getting used to the terminology and doing this? Because for a lot of teams, what you call a drag it's the same. It might be 10 teams might call it this, 5 teams might call it. It's all the same. He's just got to know. He said he started that process the day after he got traded. So he's been working on that. Now it's just putting it into practice.
Right.
So I think having a chance to kind of set your foundation here, build on it in Australia is a plus.
Yeah, along those lines, I'm just, selfishly for us, I mean, you're going to get to go, but I like that they're cramming as much practice in here before they go. I mean, there's 7 practices. You have 2 two-a-days. We had one yesterday. They're going to have another one today. And then the single practices on Friday, Saturday, Sunday before they get on the plane. So they're going to, because there's going to be distractions in Australia, and there should be. But I think right now, while we're still in New Orleans, they're going to cram in as much basketball as they can because this training camp is so spread out because of the trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. I think it's almost like.
Did I steal your thunder?
No,
Oh,
not really.
Sorry.
See,
I
he's
think-
mentioning Thunder again. He loves the Thunder.
Subliminal,
Loves the
subliminal,
Thunder.
subliminal.
I think it's basically almost like 2 separate training camps. There's going to be the one where they go to Australia, and even when they come back from Australia, they have to be off for a certain number of days because of the CBA and the fact that they started earlier than the vast majority of the teams, so they're kind of getting that back on the back end. And then when they come back, you still have the 2 preseason games, and you still have there's a long time even from when they come back from Australia till the beginning of the regular season. So it's just a unique way to kind of go into the season. So I'm curious to see how that impacts the way that they prepare.
How many times did I elbow you
It's a
in
little
the
sore.
ribs?
The rib cage is a little sore.
His name is Saddiq Bey. I think this is going to be a tremendous addition to the team. I mean, I've liked Bey since he was you play for Jay Wright at Villanova. You're going to be a well-rounded basketball player who's going to do it on both ends. And this is a guy, you hear the term 3-and-D. This is what he can do. And a lot of people, he did not play for an entire year. Ironically, tore his ACL against the Pelicans when he was with the Hawks on that Sunday afternoon in Atlanta. But sat out a year and was, you don't want to say a throw-in in the Poole McCollum trade, but I mean, hey, I'll take him. Look, guys can be a 40% three-point shooter. He's big enough where he can play the 3, he can play the 4. He is athletic, he can play defense. This is exactly the type of player that this team needs. And again, you saw it last night. I mean, how many shots did he miss? 1?
It was impressive. And you mentioned the Pels being the team that he tore his ACL against. And
Right.
obviously then lost an entire season.
Right.
as he was rehabbing about that. When we were finishing up with our interviews on Monday or Tuesday on media day, I asked him about that. I was like, what do you think about the fact that this is where you get to start your basketball journey? And he's like, I just believe in things coming full circle. And the fact that he's able to kind of get back on the floor in New Orleans after having it happen against New Orleans, it's not something that he doesn't, think about or has that has not crossed his mind in terms of like everything kind of coming full circle. And I think he is kind of using a little bit of that as a guy we saw who that year in Atlanta that he had, it wasn't the best season that he had. And I think he wants to kind of get back to being that scorer, being that kind of guy. It's a small list of guys who have scored 50 points in an NBA game, and he is on that list.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Corey Brewer now is not the only guy in the gym who can say that. Yeah. Thought maybe like once CJ left, because CJ could only do it he could only say that for 2 months when CJ was here. But the fact that he is that kind of guy and can kind of now come off the bench and be that kind of spark for you, I think is a big thing.
Goes back
but
to the whole
it
chip
was
on
nice
the
to hear
shoulder
him
thing,
saying
yeah.
that.
Part two. I love me some Karlo Matkovic. Am I taking your thunder? Look, sorry, I don't want to say thunder anymore. Look, we got a glimpse of what Karlo could do at the end of last year, and to hear him in the studio, Gus, when we were talking to him, doing radio things, you could tell he's a more confident player, and he's got all the ability. He's got size. He's got athleticism. He can shoot threes. He can rebound. He can block shots. He can dunk. We saw him have a couple of alley-oops last night in a scrimmage. I just think he's ready to really blossom. And this is, he's not going to be in the starting lineup. If you think what I believe they think the starting five would be, he's not. But what about that guy coming off the bench? I'm just really anxious to see what Karlo can do this year.
Yeah, he's a guy that came through big time in the second half of the season last year. I thought he was a huge boost, and once he got playing time, he took advantage of it. I think from late January on through the rest of the season. The players that I'm looking forward to of the new guys, I think Jordan Poole is fun to watch. Kevon Looney, I think, is also a guy that I'm keeping my eye on during training camp. I don't know if in like a practice setting or like a camp setting you can really fully grasp what he does. I think you have to get into the games where he starts setting the bruising screens on different guys and starts intimidating people and clearing people out underneath the basket. I don't know if he can play with the same ferocity against teammates that he will when we get into the season, but I'm looking forward to him. And I think just from some of the things that he's talked about so far about adding defense, rebounding, I think he's going to be a really good addition and somebody that's going to help a ton. In terms of returning players, the guy, Andrew referenced this earlier, the guy that I'm most excited about is Herb Jones. And I think I've mentioned this before, that this could be the Herb Jones Vengeance Tour. He's never going to characterize it that way. Right. He's never going to say anything about, people have not forgotten about him, but I feel like it almost felt like last season never really started for him because he played 5 games and then he was out for a while. Then he came back, played some games, was out again. People, when they assess his season last year, you look at the stats and it's like, I don't know if it really means anything what his stats ended up being in terms of.
Herb got hurt in the third game last year.
Yeah.
The third game of the season.
People said, his three-point shooting was down a lot, but it's like, how do you even evaluate or judge what he did based on how segmented his season was? He never really was on the floor for a consistent, extended stretch.
And think about, I told you yesterday, my favorite stat is 50-40-90. 50% field goal shooting, 40% three-point shooting, 90% from the free throw line. It's happened 11 times in the history of the NBA. Herb Jones 2 years ago was 50-40-85. And I think people forget that, not to mention he was a first-team all-defensive player. So that's what he is capable of offensively as well as defensively.
ESPN just did the top 100, the ESPN rank, the NBA rank that they do. I'm going to give you a little background on how that process works. I was a part of that for a few years. When you're doing it, you're kind of just voting player to player, but it's a projection towards the 25-26 season. So when you see Cooper Flagg at 52 ahead of some of these players, they're not saying Cooper Flagg is the 52nd best player in the NBA. It's Cooper Flagg will have the 52nd most impact in this upcoming season. So you see a guy like Victor Wembanyama in the top 10 now. Victor Wembanyama is not a top 10 player, although I think he probably could be. They're projecting impact. On this list a year ago, there were 6 Pelicans on opening night.
Yep.
Not that many this year. One of the guys not to make that list, they're saying is not going to be a top 100 player in the NBA this year, is Herb Jones. Now, I had a couple of my former colleagues, and there's a section of snubs, and I think 3 of them said, well, hey, this guy was a first-team all-defense
Is it an
guy.
out of sight, out of mind type?
And it is. And so I think we've all kind of collectively, like, there's a collective, mindfulness of, like, what he did not do. Like, 50, 40, 85. And going back to, he had a rough start from 3. He can never really get going from 3. If you go back to the 50, 40, 85 season, if you go back to October, November,
It was slow start.
It was below 30.
Yeah, he was in the upper 20s.
He shot over 50 for the next 4 months. He had to get his rhythm. He had to get going. So I think you're going to see a little bit more from him. For me, for the new and returning, I'll go returning first because I'm very happy. Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm here to help.
For not saying Trey Murphy III.
See, that's
So, sorry. My bad, Gus. Because I think Trey Murphy is primed. He mentioned receipts.
That's
and
another
mentioned
50,
this.
40, 90 candidate, by the way.
He did it in college. He left Virginia.
Yes, he did.
The fact that he's a guy who can kind of come in and knows he has to take a step, told you guys he wants to be an all-star. I think him being able to be out there is huge. And then I think the new guy that I'm looking forward to is I want to see Jeremiah Fears. He's your guy. He's your number 6 pick. Or 7 pick. Where he's the guy who I want to see what he can do against these guys.
He's going to play.
We're gonna mention this a lot. He should be in college right now.
yeah. Yep.
Just like Cooper, it's the same
A freshman
thing.
in college.
A freshman in college. This is a kid who averaged 18 in the SEC last year.
Yeah.
He kind of got a taste of it in summer league. But what does he look like now on in the NBA on a grander scale, kind of having to go through it and see what these guys can do?
Depth is something that a lot of times I think people that cover the teams or with the teams use often. And the reasoning behind it is different, right? Is there good depth? Is there bad depth? But to the new and returning players, look, I think Jordan Poole's going to really, I mean, we forget just a couple of years ago, he signed a massive deal. And when he was with Golden State, there were some people going to see the heir apparent to Steph. This guy can light it up, and we saw it already in practice.
Yep.
Trey Murphy, same thing. The guy says he's an all-star caliber player. We all know from doing the podcast last year, he's a player that absolutely, I think, has all the qualities, but it goes to depth, which is why I want to close out with this. How everybody uses their time on the court. There's only one basketball. There's only so many minutes. So a guy like him, for him to be an all-star caliber player, certain touches and stuff, but you got Z, you got Jordan, you got the bigs, so that's going to be interesting to me as to how I look at this team depth-wise. Is that a good thing where we are depth or not? I think it can be.
It can.
That's going to be a challenge.
It can be. One thing I think that's going to stand out to me, and I'm very excited to watch about having Jordan Poole and Trey Murphy on the floor together, is you have 2 guys who have legitimate 4-point range, if we're going to call it that.
Which is what we saw last night.
So, to us, and just kind of to explain, on the practice court in the Pels facility is a 4-point line that is roughly 3 to 4 feet.
A solid 3 feet behind
the 3-point line. And it's there for spacing issues. We see Trey practice at it all the time. We see Jose practice at it all the time. Jordan Poole was treating it like the 3-point line in the first practice and was making shots. After the first practice, he was just going around, just routinely working on that shot. You have 2 guys who are legit threats out to 30 feet.
Space.
You now have space. Herb, we've seen what he can do from the corners. Now Z has room to operate. And you can move around. And I think having a guy like, whether it's Loon, whether it's Eve, either one of those guys out there, Eve gives you more of a lob threat. He can kind of roll. You can kind of find him. Loon, Jim is going to get very excited being able to watch Kevon Looney set screens this year. So the fact that you have that kind of, that's what I think I'm looking forward to, kind of seeing how that first group kind of comes together, no matter who's out there on the floor, because of that space.
But Todd, that second group ain't no joke either.
No, it's not. Look, Willie Green's going to, and the staff is, I'm actually, while you were talking about, just glad it is an extended training camp because they got a lot of opportunity to try to see what kind of lineups they're going to mix and match with because there are going to be options. Are you going to go small? Well, you've got the personnel to do that. Are you going to go big? You're going to have the personnel to do that too. Are you going to have a little mix with the 2 group and the 1 group? Again, how many are going to be in the rotation? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 11? Is it going to be 12? But if it's 10, it's going to be real competitive to try to get on that floor because
you like the rookies too.
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't even talk about Derek Queen.
Who's working his way back.
Yes. I mean, he was on the court. We've seen him on the court. So it's just this coaching staff, it's a good problem to have. They're going to have to work out who is going to play with who.
Now you have multiple guys that can play that position. So I think to one of the things that Graff just said too, that there's going to be a lot of difficult decisions. I think quickly too, point guard is another spot where you look at it and you're like, okay, Jordan Poole's in the mix. Jeremiah Fears picked 7th. Jose Alvarado's been productive, helped you win games a ton in the 4 years that he's been here. Oh, by the way, DeJounte Murray will be coming back at some point as well. So I mean, these are
like a trade deadline, acquisition.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just one of those things where it's a good problem to have. But if you're a coach, you're going to have to make some really tough decisions and figure out who's going to play and how you're going to divvy up the minutes. But, I mean, that's a good thing that they have extra options. But those 2 positions, to me in particular, are really interesting.
Again, as you can hear already, we have a lot to get into. We can, because it's a good thing. I think this team has a lot of talent. Try not to get in a fight with the kangaroo, television sideline reporter Andrew Lopez. Looking forward to that. Watch out from the koalas, too. They got claws. The Graff.
Good
we'll
night,
hear his
mate.
calls when we get ready for
Graff's
the
been waiting on that all
preseason
podcast,
against the Rockets and Magic. And follow all of Jim's works over on Pelicans.com. He'll be carrying you all the way into the regular season. I'm Gus Kattengell. Thank you for tuning in to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. We'll be with you all season. Until next time, so long, everyone.